Hello, everyone. It is the 23rd of October, 2023. Can everybody hear me? Do I have a sound check? Hi, Julie M. How you doing? The crowd. How you doing, buddy? Tony Johnson. Tim Hunt. Can all you folks hear me? Can I have a sound check? Hey, Robert. A-OK. So I guess you folks can hear me. At any rate, Philip Dilberg. How you doing, buddy? Okay, 100%, huh? That's great. 5x5. Well, today I chose an interesting guy to talk about, and my opinions about, which are they differ from other people's. Probably because I knew him. I met him. I actually knew him to talk to him. We actually talked to each other. He called me the kid. I called him Phil. Never Mr. Alderisio. But in the very beginning, he was partners in a lot of things. And they had skimmed, I don't know who all was involved in it. I think Joey Lombardo was the main figure, Tony Spilaccio, and they were part of the same crew. Everybody met at American Bonding on State Street. And there's some amazing facts I picked up by looking up some FBI 302s about Phil. And I think you might be interested in some of them. Some I didn't know, some I did. But he was Danny Seaford's partner in, I'm not sure, it was a plastics company and a fiberglass. And the way Nick Seaford talked about him was that he was like their friend, the best guy you'd ever know. They went to barbecues. Joey Seaford speaks well of him. But like anything, he had a sordid past. What he was really good at, excellent at, also part of his crew at that time was Sam DiStefano. I didn't know that before. Sammy D was part of the Grand Avenue crew. I didn't know that. I knew there was a relationship because of Tony. I knew there was a relationship because of other things. What Sam did was 34 lies. A man in the moon from England. Well, hello from across the pond. In his earlier years, before he got real prolific in money, he actually bankrolled the narcotics in Chicago. He was always traveling to Europe, and he was over in what do you call it? Greece. He was over in Turkey. He was over in Sicily, and he made the arrangements through New York. And along with him was Irv Weiner. That was his real partner, Irv Weiner. Irv Weiner and him were really involved in a lot of business dealings together. They scammed banks. They scammed savings and loans. And at one point, it was Marshall's Savings and Loan that they scammed. And Marshall Savings and Loan closed at, went defunct on New Year's Eve, 1964. And I remember that because it was in Berwyn. And our economics teacher at school was talking about how they held a midnight meeting and they defunct it. And what they did was they gave out leases to different pieces of property that were held for collateral. And Kurt Hansen got one of those leases. And that's kind of Kurt was my in anyway. But I never saw Phil as an abusive person. Frank Collada described him as a gruff person, spoke with a gravel voice. Well, maybe he had a cold when he talked to him. It was kind of crazy. But the way it went with Phil, he was a big earner. And I never realized, like I said before, I never realized that a lot of his income came in from narcotics. And that was with Sam DiStefano. Phil was a dynamic person, well-dressed, died at an early age of 59. And he was under indictment, actually. A friend of mine who told me about him years ago, Jimmy DeLorto, arrested him for an unlawful weapon. And he was under other indictments coming down, but he hadn't been charged yet, but they picked him up. Well, he fought all his legal fees and everything else. Eventually, he was convicted of extortion. And the extortion was in Las Vegas. And it was at, which hotel was that at? It was Mo Dalitz's hotel. And Mo Dalitz was really part of the Detroit Mafia. And he was also part of the Kansas City crew. And what had happened was he went to a bank that it was called Parkway Bank. It was in Parkway Bank. It was in Harwood Heights, and he defrauded that bank also. He defrauded a lot of banks. Yes, Kissy Cat. It was the Desert Inn. It was the Desert Inn. That's the hotel. But at any rate, it was what it was. So what happened was after all the conning and all the other things, Phil White finally went to prison in 1969. But he was the boss then, too. Paul Ricca somehow passed it over to him, and he became the boss of Chicago at that time. Tony Accardo was out of the picture. He wanted to be. Things were going pretty good until it all fell apart. Well, when Phil was in prison, he only lived until 1971. I think he was in prison like 18 months, and he was 59 years old and died of a heart attack. But he was involved with Marshall Cafano, was his running mate, someone else who I knew. Didn't meet Marshall there, met Marshall much later. But he was also the boss of the Grand Avenue crew at that time. And being boss also. It's kind of like Joey Ayupa, who took, he was his, he succeeded him and became the Chicago boss after Phil. So Phil was a nice guy. I didn't see any mean, ugly parts to him, which other people did. He did have Frank Schweiss for a bodyguard. And as a matter of fact, Jimmy DeLorto told me that when he went to make the arrest with the FBI on Phil, that Schweiss came running out of the house next door. He lived next door to him in Riverside, Illinois. And he started to attack the agents. Frank Schweiss did. But they hauled Phil away. And like I said, he finally went to prison. When Phil died in prison, some dramatic things happened. Probably the most dramatic for some people was that he sold all of his interest in Danny Seiffert's company to Irv Weiner. Irv Weiner wound up selling his interest to Joey Lombardo. And that was the end of a lot of things. I mean, I think we all know the Danny Seifert story. Danny was murdered by Tony Spilaccio, Frank Schweiss, and Joey Lombardo was there. Shouldn't have been there, but he was. And that was kind of the beginning at the end for the Seifert family. There were other things that happened. There was a man that was dating his mistress, not his wife, but his mistress. And he had asked for permission to date her. And Phil said, no. Well, he did anyway. After Phil was dead, the guy was murdered. And we always called it reaching from the grave. He reached up from the grave and took his life. There was quite a meeting at Phil's funeral. Tony Accardo showed up. Everybody showed up. And I mean, a few people were in prison. Sam Giancana was in exile. So they didn't show up naturally. But what happened was that Phil, I met Phil in 1968 when he was doing all the crazy things. He had Pioneer Savings and Loan. I believe Nick Seifert was talking about a lion that they got. It was like a piggy bank type thing. And he talked about it on one of his YouTube shows that he was on. And he talked about that lion. He was on with Paul Whitcomb, I believe. It was a good story. Told a lot. At any rate, he was quite a character. Quite a character. Kissy Cat, you're right. Never date a mistress of an ex-mobster. Well, he wasn't an ex-mobster. He was calling the shots from prison. So he was still pretty much in Tim Hunt. Was Milwaukee Phil function a Chicago or Vegas or both? He functioned wherever he wanted to go. I mean, he functioned with New York families. He actually helped the New York families import narcotics way back when. Yes, Harris Bank was one. Outfit boss. When did Joey Lombardo become a Grand Avenue boss? He became the Grand Avenue boss when Phil went to prison, and that was in 1969. Nice correction, Kissy Cat. You meant an ex-wife, not an ex-mobster. I got you on. Yes, you're right. It was a no-no, but Sam Giancana didn't think so. He okayed it, and he was boss at the time. Outfit boss. Wasn't Frank Schweiss tight with Phil? They were so tight, Phil took him for a bodyguard. And that was back in, I believe, 1961. He took him for a bodyguard. That was before the murder of Marilyn Monroe. Frank was in, Milwaukee Phil was involved in that. Hey, Byron. Red, do you know why they called him Milwaukee Phil? Yes, in his early years, before he got hooked up with the Capone gang, he was a boxer. And he went up to Milwaukee and had some dealings with Frank Ballesteri in Milwaukee. And he became a boxer. And having the name Felix for a real name, they changed his name to Milwaukee Phil because it sounded more macho. That's exactly the reason why, guy. I think that was Frank Ballesteri that decided to do that. Hello, Kevin. How you doing? Did I ever hang with him? I had lunch with him a couple times at the restaurant next to Mr. Pat's was the name of it. At I wasn't not alone. I was with other people at 11th and State. Mr. Pat's, right next to Mr. Pat's. Mr. Pat's bordered 11th Street, and right next to it, store going north, was American Bonding. So it was close, easy. Hello, Princess Mish. I believe that's Michigan. How are you doing? Thank you for saying hi. Somebody asked a question here. The crowd. Mm-hmm. No, you didn't ask the question. I should have tagged it. Oh, you're thinking of Chucky Nicoletti's work car. That was really Milwaukee Phil's work car. And he put it together. Chucky Nicoletti actually was in charge of it. And they called it the hitmobile. And during the Eminem murders, while Tony Spilaccio was out grabbing these guys, Phil was in charge of it. And Phil and Chucky Nicoletti got stopped by a police officer. And they detained them. And they asked him what it was all about, hidden compartments and for weapons, pistols, shotguns, whatever. And he went and they walked away. Dave M., how you doing, buddy? Good to see you here. Tim Peroni, lots of stories about that so-called work car. There certainly was. There was a lot of stories about it. Ace McMullen, I think I answered your question about why it was called Milwaukee Phil and what his ties were to Milwaukee. From there, he left Milwaukee and he used to hang around. He was arrested several times for vagrancy for hanging around the Lexington Hotel, looking for a job with Al Capone. He was a very aggressive young man. And he was who he was. Did Phil have any kids? Yes, he did. He did. I think his work car was a 64 LeBaron. I think his work car was a 62 Ford Galaxy. No, it wasn't. In jail a lot? No, he was indicted a lot. He beat a lot of his cases, almost 100%. Pete Byron, did you ever hear anybody call him Milwaukee Phil? Not to his face. Not to his face. We just called him Phil. That was it. I never called him Mr. Alderisio. I just said Phil. I didn't even know his last name in the beginning. We all knew people by their first names, unless they were nicknames like Lumpy or like that would be Joey Lombardo. or like the little guy, that would be Tony Spilaccio. The rabbi, that would have been Erwin Weiner. Irv Weiner was really close to him. Also, Phil was very close to another man, Red Dorfman, Alan Dorfman's father. They did a lot of business together. Phil seemed to have a connection with Detroit. Well, let's go from the West, from California to Denver to Detroit to Las Vegas, or let's go back, Las Vegas, Chicago, which was his base, Cleveland, Ohio, and also Detroit, and then New York. He had some very strong connections in New York, and also some very strong connections in Miami. Tim Hunt, 71 in the house, but only 27 likes. Okay, that tells me a lot. You don't like it. Okay. Goff, we hear a lot of things. There were two cars, a Ford and then a Burgundy Impala Chevy. We hear a lot of things, but that isn't it. Red, how is Diane Hansen doing? She's doing quite well. She's getting along real well. Good question. And this is my take, okay? Did Phil growl when he talked? Well, according to Frank Schweiss or Frank Collada, he did. But I don't know how he must have had a sore throat or something when he was talking to him. He didn't growl when I heard him talk. And I don't think he growled at Sam Giancana when he used to talk to him, and he'd tell him about the ruins and how beautiful it was over in Greece and Italy and everything else. And Sam would scream at him over the phone. This is on Wiretaps, according to Bill Romer, that he used to go spastic. Actually, he used to go spastic. 6 inches huge. Changed my mind. You sent me a $1.99 super sticker. Thank you, buddy. What am I supposed to change your mind about? Pete Byron, I can't find the like button on HDTV. You might have to push the up arrow to see it because it might be below. I love the Kenny Stabber photo. Okay. You like his photo. How about somebody give me some likes here? Show me some love, folks. Thank you, 6 inches. Changed my mind. That's low. Julie M., hit the like button, please. Yes, there are. Are they available on? Are there any known recordings of interviews, videos of Milwaukee Phil? Only that the FBI has. They're actually illegal wiretaps. They didn't have a court order for them. John Oliver, how good to see you, John. It's been a while. It sure has. God bless you for stopping by. Hit that like button. I need all the help I can get, buddy. Big Mo, how you doing, buddy? You hit the like button. Robert, just got 6 inches of likes. Pete Byron, how did Phil get his start with the outfit? Well, from my understanding, he just was a 18, 19-year-old kid that was hanging around and wanted to run errands or do whatever he could. And that was crazy. 6 Inches changed my mind as another one. Another super sticker. Thank you, buddy. Who went spastic on who? Phil to Sam to the reverse. It was Sam Giancana that screamed at Phil and said, I don't know the exact verbiage, but it was similar to this. I got cops coming out of my kazoo, and you're talking about runes. Get the hell back here. I need help. It was Phil. It was Sam Giancana that screamed at Phil. He was very subservient at that time. They were all kind of equals at one time. Phil was an equal with Sam Giancana, but Sam got the push up. Tony Cardo gave him the word, and he was well liked. No, Phil was dead before my store ever opened. Phil died in 1971 at the age of 59 in prison. It was just after he dispatched Tony Spilaccio to Las Vegas. It all had to do with that skim from the what do you call it? Mm-hmm. Six Inches is huge. Changed my mind. Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you. You're welcome, buddy. John Olivet, when you cooperated, did you get any calls or stop-bys or any threatening calls? No. No one ever threatened me. They didn't have the chance to. And I think they were afraid. They didn't know what I was going to talk about. Ryan Brown, good afternoon. Hope you're doing well. How many people did Phil actually kill himself personally? I don't know. How many people did he order murdered? I really don't know the exact number. Was he partial to any particular weapon? Yes, he was partial. He liked the 45. He liked his 45 automatics. He also had a Thompson submachine gun, but he advised people like Frank Schweiss and taught him well to use a 22 long barrel with a silencer. And Frank was prolific with it, very prolific. Schweiss was very good with that weapon. 1 in the leg and 7 in the head. Unless you were close enough to him, you put 7 in the back of his head or 8 in the back of his head and never had to shoot him in the leg. But he always said, cripple them first. And when they're down, that's time to put them out of their misery, so to speak. Michael Graham, hi, Red, and all the we metters. Better late than never. You're right about that one. That one's hard to pronounce. Foehm. Well, anyway, your comment is, I think that Sam got the push because Tuna liked Phil and Chucky more. I don't know. At that time, Paul Rica was the boss, really, and Phil took over. Ex-cop, you gave me a like. Thank you so much. Chicago Joe just got here. Sorry if it was discussed. Interesting. Phil was with Spilaccio for the head and the vice torture. Yes, he was. Only heard about Spilaccio. No, Phil was actually there. They were torturing. Okay, your name is Faux Hammer. Okay, Faux Hammer. Welcome. Welcome, guy. Good to see you. I'm going to slide up a little closer. So anyway, I thought it was interesting. Phil kind of disappeared early part of my life, and he wasn't seen in the office that much either. But he was busy. He was with Irv Weiner. He was with Danny Seaford. He was out always at making deals at different savings and loans. He conned more savings and loans than you could shake a stick at. He used to go after the money a lot. Very good at it. Excellent. But that was a very tight crew. And at the time, it was the strongest crew. Even the Cicero crew was not that strong at the time. Faux Hammer, wasn't Nicoletti there for the iPop? Yes, he was. Chucky Nicoletti was a very vicious man. But then again, I thought it was Phil that was vicious too. Phil had no problems with crushing his head in the vice. He had no problem with that. And Phil actually, because of the narcotics part of it, put him with Sam DiStefano, Tony Spilaccio. Phil's the one that said, go keep an eye on him. And according to some people, he honed his skills with Sam DiStefano being a torturer, but it was really with Phil. Changed my mind. 6 inches. 6 inches is huge. Changed my mind. Always wanted to know crew fights, especially the upper brass. They really didn't have any in Chicago and the upper brass. They really didn't. They didn't really fight with the upper brass. Thank you, buddy. Thank you again for this is the third super sticker you gave me. God, thank you, buddy. John Olivet, how do you con a bank? It's easy to con a bank. You make false applications. You give all different kinds of collateral that doesn't even exist. You con a bank. You make a false application. You make them believe something's there that really isn't. Birds of a feather do flock together. Let me tell you, that's true. What did Phil die from? He died of a heart attack at age 59, and he was only in prison in Marion 18 months. At age 59, and he died a millionaire. He was a multimillionaire. We don't hear much about Phil, do we? Kissy Cat. You misspelled Irv's name, but I'm pretty sure. Weiner. You're talking about Irv Weiner. Weiner. Irv was Jewish. Yes, he was very Jewish. That's why we called him the rabbi. And he didn't mind that being called to his face, too. Rabbi, come over here. We want to talk to you. He looked at it as a loving comment. Mad Attack. 22 when you make a hit. 45 when your life depends it. I get that. You're right. Bill Crawley, how you doing? Okay, thank you. 6 inches is huge. Changed my mind. Okay, thank you. Who did Phil growl at? I'll tell you limb from limb during a meeting. I don't remember anybody that he growled at during a meeting and said, I'll tell you limb from limb. But it sounds like him. He was that kind of person. He was tough, mean, but he had his loving side too. I got a kick out of Nick Seifert talking about him and saying he used to make special things for him, or if they didn't have something he wanted and they were having a barbecue, he'd send out for it. And Nick was a little guy. He was only about 8, 9 years old. But whatever he did want to please the kids, he'd send somebody out. Don't be sorry, Bill. You're here. Hit the like button, buddy. Kissy Cat. Prison is stressful. It must have been 18 months of it, and bang. It was over. Julianne, Chicago was much different than New York. The outfit got along with New York and the 5 families. Obviously, he had connections with New York. He also had connections with Miami, guys down in Miami. He had connections with, what's his name? Miami, the bank, they called him. Meyer Lansky. He was close to Meyer Lansky also. And also Irv Weiner was. And there were some papers that I was looking through that said he was involved in some way with Chucky Nicoletti. And these federal documents were just released in the Kennedy assassination. I just looked at them online yesterday. Michael Graham, is that the same Irv Weiner who owned a car dealership? No, it is not. You're talking about Bert Weinman, not Weiner. Irv Weiner was a tough Jewish kid from the patch that he just, him and Phil were friends from teenage years, going all the way up. Him and Jack Ruby's brother, Rubenstein. Talk about networking. That's what it's all about. Yeah. 6 inches is huge. Changed my mind. I thought it was about a territory dispute. It could have been, and I didn't know about it. It could have been before my time. At the time that I was around, he wasn't really fighting with anybody. I mean, he went out to Vegas and did what he wanted to do at the hotel out there. And he was just that way. He'd take money from gamblers. He was loan sharking. He was doing a lot of things. But also he put Joey Lombardo out loan sharking. Joey was part of his crew. And Joey eventually took over his crew, the Grand Avenue crew. Were Phil and Nicoletti equals? And who were their soldiers? There was a lot of them. I mean, I don't know who all of them were, but they were equals at one time. They said Phil growling at Joe Ferriola at a meeting speaking when Phil and Fifi. Yes, you just refreshed my mind. That's a fact. They were arguing amongst the two of them, and he just jumped right in. You're exactly right. That was the dispute. And thank you for helping people out here, including 6 inches changed my mind because he asked that question. I heard about it. Jack Ruby was the brother from Texas. Yes. I forget Ruby's brother in Chicago. Jack Ruby was in Texas. Thanks for clearing that up, Red. Bart Wyman car sales. Irv Weiner puts you in the trunk. He could. As I wrote my book, Irv Weiner, I thought he was a dapper man, but I thought he was kind of more of a businessman. He was wearing a suit all the time, and a lot of us modeled ourselves after him, like Tony did with nice clothes. I did suits and ties. It was just that way. But Irv Weiner puts you in the trunk. No, he sends somebody to do it. He doesn't. He never did any heavy work himself that I know of. So she's huge. Changed my mind. Okay, thank you. That's what you were talking. You're talking about Laporte, Fifi Bouchieri, and Ferriola, Joe Ferriola, Southsiders. Yes, that's. I remember hearing about that. I do remember hearing about it. It was very interesting. I never saw him like other people I've talked about. I never saw these guys raise their voice unless it was a card game. How powerful was Fifi? On the South Side, he was powerful. On Rush Street, he became powerful. But going up the food chain, he was never going to be a boss. What I mean by boss, the boss. He was never going to get up in the Giancana area or Paul Rica or any of that upper echelon. Basically, because he believed in prostitution and things of that nature. So he left a lot of things go that his morals weren't exactly what the top end said they should be. Julian, Chucky Nicoletti Jr. sounds much different than his father. Jr. is more of a wannabe, more of a dumb criminal. I don't know who you're talking about, but I take your word for it, Julie. So here we are on a nice sunny day, and it's beautiful here. And we're talking about Phil Alderisio. Also, I wanted to tell you, it's supposed to be a surprise, but I'm going to give you a hint. My vlog will be back on Tuesday, the 31st of this month, Halloween. Adam and I were talking about it late last night. I wouldn't say last night, I mean early this morning. Close to 4 o'clock my time this morning. So my vlog will be back on. I think you're going to like it too. We're going to have one heck of a story and good things. However, until that time, on Halloween, you're right. That's it, Kissy Cat. On Halloween. So Tyson's Acosta, Milwaukee Phil was a scary dude. Yeah, I guess he was a scary dude if you were afraid. I mean, if he was angry at you, he was a big man, he was a large man, and very affable, very capable of taking care of himself. And he could probably pick you up with one hand. And he was violent. Very violent. He had no qualms or quibbles about hurting people. But he was also a genius when it came to bookmaking. When I say bookmaking, I don't mean making bets. I mean looking at books as a bookkeeper. Phil could understand things that other people couldn't. He was very good at it. But he got all over the United States and Europe. 6 inches huge. Can't change my mind. Can't wait till Tuesday. Well, that would be the Tuesday, not tomorrow, but the Tuesday coming up, and you set your notification for my vlog. Take a look at it. It's going to be very good. Michael Graham, did Adam try to get you to go to the Haunted Tavern in Vegas on Halloween again? No, but I was at the Good Springs tour, and I was out there at the tavern in Las Vegas, or saloon, and it was something else. Tyson's Acosta, I didn't know that bookkeeping skills were top notch. Yeah, they're kind of important. When you're counting your money, you better know it's going in the right place. I mean, Al Capone's bookkeeping skills were lousy. Even the people he hired were lousy. Julian, is my vlog changing Tuesdays permanently? No, it's not. This is just because of Halloween and what's coming up. If you go to look at it, you'll see it, and hit the bell for notification. A lot of the older guys seem to be boxers back in the day. I guess that showed because the bosses could work with their fists. Yeah. But back in the day, I don't know how old you are, guy, but even till the 70s, people that came up, they were all good with their fists. Every one of them. They were scrappers. Tony Spilaccia was a scrapper. Joey Lombardo was a scrapper. Their kids were scrappers. Vienna, he's a scrapper. He's still alive. That whole Grand Avenue crew was all scrappers. Jimmy Cozo, he was a scrapper. So you want to go back to the Capone days? Sam Giancana, he was a scrapper too. He was wild. Kissy Cat, what was my favorite song played at my dance club? You're gonna laugh. You're not gonna laugh. It wasn't everybody's favorite song, but it was mine. It was called "Zing Went the Strings of My Heart," and it was by the Tramps. How about Jake Greasy Thumb Guzik? He was a good bookkeeper, a very good bookkeeper, and also very close to Milwaukee Phil. They worked very close together. Phil was a dynamic individual, very dynamic, and less talked about than a lot of people. And probably well known for the hitmobile, his relationship with Tony and Joey. And also they talk about I'm trying to think of the guys, Manny Scar. Manny Scar was involved with the loan from the motel that he owned. And Joe Lombardo was the one who actually murdered him. He did the hit. Michael Graham, yes, you're right. That's why Joey Yupa went under the name Joe O'Brien. Kissy Cat, nice song. You like "Zing with the Strings of My Heart"? It's got a beat to it. It was a disco song. I loved it. Pete Byron, Red, what did Phil go to jail for the last time? Two things, really. One was extortion. It was had to do with a guy at the hotel out in Vegas, And I don't really, there was like 3 or 4 different things, but he was actually charged with what actually got him into prison was the extortion and the bank fraud, extorting the bank also. Six Inches changed my mind. Who else did Lombardo kill? Actually, there isn't anybody that I know other than Richard Kane that he actually pulled the trigger on. He actually pulled the trigger on Richard Kane. And that was in 1974, I believe. But he always had somebody else take care of it after that. Tim Peroni, did Phil and Chuck, I assume you're talking about Milwaukee Phil, and Chuck, I don't know which Chuck you're talking about. No, Frank Sinatra. I'm quite sure they did. Quite sure. There's no doubt in my mind. At any rate, George Wilson, the Big Al in Chicago went down because of a signature that matched in different ledgers that could be linked to Al's closest crew. Okay. For all you historians, that's what happened. Hey, come on, folks, give me some likes here. I must have at least 80 of you folks in here. Can I get 60 likes? Come on, give me a break. Good to see all of you, really. And my members, good to see you. It really is. I like to see you. I looked forward to this Monday. Was thinking about it all week and said Phil was a dynamic individual, very dynamic. When I was reading about his deals down in Miami and places that he stayed at and who he was with and what they did, very popular in Cuba and very popular back in the day of they set up gambling, offshore gambling, way back. We're talking in the 40s. This is way, way back. Robert, Red, did you have any nicknames told you behind your back? No. None that I know of. Nobody ever said anything to me. I mean, my employees are close friends to me. They never said anything. Pete Byron, any memorable, anything memorable that happened at my store? There is one thing that I thought was very memorable, Pete, and it was about Marshall Cafano was at my store, and he was with somebody else. He had a driver with him, and they had parked in the front. And across the street from me in the front was Dr. Scholl's. Well, during that period of time, Dr. Scholl's had closed, and it was a vacant building. Kind of looked dead on our end of the street. It really did. That was 1345 North Wells. I opened the front door. At that time, it wasn't glass. You couldn't see through everything. They were just doors. The front end was kind of blocked off, so you couldn't see what was in there. I was 75 feet back, actually 100 feet back, or 75 feet back and 100 feet deep. That lot was 175 feet. When I opened the door, it was lit up like daylight. They had cameras out there and camera crews. And what had happened was there was a bombing next door. They found a bomb. It didn't go off at the Over 21 bookstore. And I shut the door immediately, and Marshall looked at me and said, "Oh, shit." This is the last thing I need. I just got out of prison. This is 1974 or 75, somewhere around there. And he said, I just got out of prison. I don't need this. And Marshall had a lot to do with bombs. So I figured out something that was pretty clever. I said, my car's in the garage in the back. And there was a way into the alley. I got in the car, pulled it up, and told him, I said, if we can get out of here, you can always come back for your cars. And he said, yeah, that's a good idea. Now you're thinking, can you get us out of here? And I said, sure, I can. Get in the car. So Marshall got in the back seat. Johnny Rogers got in the car, and Dick Hoyt and somebody else got in the car. And I drove to the end of the alley, which was at Schiller, and a police officer stopped me. They had the whole neighborhood blocked off. And he said, what are you doing back here? And I said, I own the store back here. I own some property. I'm a landlord. And he said, yeah, let's see your driver's license. He showed me his driver's license. Or I showed him my driver's license. And he called on his radio. And he talked to somebody else and gave my name. And he said, I heard a return on the radio. And I said, yeah, that's Red. Just let him go. Don't worry about him. We know who he is. Well, Marshall was kind of crunched down in the corner in the back seat of my car. And he said, who are these guys? And I said, they're all friends of mine. And they let us pass. Was that dynamic? To me, it was. Tim Peroni, did Phil have to get permission from Sam to whack somebody? Yes, he did. Kissy Cat, did they speak Spanish? I really don't know. I'm guessing they did, but I don't know for sure. Julie M., I look forward to your shows on Mondays. I always learn something new. Well, sometimes I do too. Did you ever hear anything about Murray Humphreys, Red? I heard about his golfing techniques and the fact that he used to keep a weapon in his golf bag. One guy that was really fascinated with him because he was in prison with Marshall Cafano was Johnny Rogers. Johnny Rogers, it was something else. He liked him. Michael Graham, it wasn't in your shop, but outside where Frank shots. That was more comical than it was memorable. Yeah, it was memorable. But outside where Frank Scott got beat up or beat down by some transvestites, it seemed memorable. It was memorable. Was the bomb connected to the outfit? No, it was connected to Ruben Sturman. And he was trying to get back his pornography shops. What is the story on the bowling alley called on River Road in Schiller Park? Good little coffee shop. I don't know. I really don't know, George. I don't know what the story is on that place. I never went there, never hung out there. I traveled in different circles than a lot of people. You'd never find Joey Lombardo hanging out in a bowling alley. He just didn't do it. He had other interests. He might be at a boxing match or something like that, but never a bowling alley. Might be at the gym working out. Never at a bowling alley. Just didn't happen. Cody, BS. Was there any mob action in Lamont? Yes, there was. Will County, Lamont, Illinois, where the quarries are, there was always action out there. Most of it was bookmakers, chop shops, all different kinds of things. It's kind of big. Worked real well. So anyway, folks, I want to thank you all for stopping by. I hope you hit that like button. I really appreciate you being here and look forward to seeing you soon. And don't forget to set your notification buttons for Adam's thumbnails up there for the 31st, I believe. It's a Tuesday. And God bless you and everyone you love. And let's have a wonderful week and do the best we can to help each other out. God bless.
The combination of the videotapes and Ouimette's testimony resulted in the conviction of 2 men on extortion charges. One of them was Frank Schweiz, known in syndicate circles as the German, a feared mob terrorist and a suspect in a number of gangland murders.
He was described to me by other outfit individuals as the most feared hitman. And as he said to me, my reputation precedes me, son.